think it's about to snow. It's real cold. And I'm not dressed warmly enough, but I came out here real fast just to cover up some of the plants that I'm worried about. Hydrangea macrophylla needs to be covered during these freezes because otherwise the buds get damaged and then they don't flower. Because I made the mistake last year of not doing that, and then I didn't have like hardly any flowers to look at all year. So I'm looking around and I'm just thinking like, I miss my garden. And so I've just been looking at old pictures and thinking about how far this garden has come. So I thought it would be cool to take a look back at the past 6 years in the garden, because on a day like today, it just seems like the process is so slow and has stalled and can be a little bit, well, not discouraging, but it's not very exciting. So I've just been looking at all of these photos and videos of the garden over the years, and yeah, it's actually come a long way. So I thought it might be cool to share some of those with you. Six years ago, I moved into a quaint little bungalow cottage in a big city. When I moved in, there was really no planting or gardening that had been done, and I hadn't even thought of it. It was such a small space, but I did start a small garden underneath the left window. I soon ran out of space, and I began expanding that little bed, growing lilies and gladiolas and tending them carefully. They did great, but by year 2, I felt like I needed just a little bit more. So I threw a whole bunch of seeds into the hell strip. That is the strip between the street and the sidewalk. I was amazed by what resulted from such a simple action.
That's just a field of zinnias.
And the whole neighborhood was too. Everyone was talking about it. Whether they were talking about the blooms or the butterflies or the bees, it really became something that we all could admire. But like so many good things, it didn't last. Zinnias are an annual flower. They complete their entire life cycle in just 1 year. And more than anything, I just wanted that joy to last. So Mama Jack City and I made a trip to the garden center. We picked up shrubs and trees that flower and offer beautiful foliage color and evergreen interest throughout the winter. I had created this shrub border and this enlarged perennial border that I could now fill with all kinds of new planting. And this is when I knew I was really a gardener. In the fall, I was transplanting and planting all kinds of new plants that I knew wouldn't do much in the fall, but would rest and gather strength and then come up beautiful and exuberant in the spring. I even added Globosa nana, cryptomeria, and ruby red loropetalum in the foundation border. And while the gratification was certainly not as instant as planting a few seeds of zinnia, I was excited to see what would come. I babied my shrubs through winter and hoped that they would show up as happy as I expected in the spring. And boy, did they. Give me a little walk.
Give me a little walk?
Yeah. The dianthus that I planted in the foundation border filled in the space with this ruby burgundy pink color that I just adored. And Mama Jack City did too. I mixed in Dusty Miller and Snapdragon to give me color in the spring, but I had not yet discovered bulbs. And so when they died down in the summer, this bed looked kind of tired. All that was left behind were the foliage from the plants that had flowered in the spring. But I'm truly an island gardener at heart, so I also had these tropical plants that gave me color in the bright south-facing patio, like canna lilies. And of course, I still had my zinnia in the hell strip. And so I had created these garden spaces that were truly defined. I had a mixed border filled with beautiful shrubs that gave me privacy from the street. A foundation border that had quickly filled in with perennials and annuals that I could admire every day. Those small spaces really did quickly fill in, and that is what started my interest in container gardening, trying out different combinations year after year. I added sunflowers and marigolds to the mass planting of zinnia because although I loved that site, I needed to see more color, and the zinnia outgrew their space as well and found themselves in the other borders and beds. I'm so proud of my garden this year because you can tell I'm really taking into account seasonal change and seasonal interest. And I'm doing everything I can to carry the garden through different seasons with color, but I'm still learning. And it's still a challenge for me just to keep the gaps filled in and to keep the color going. But I'm not discouraged. In fact, I'm extending the mixed hedge so that I can plant more things here and in the driveway bed. And by now, I have 4 years of experience under my belt. I have watched so many seasons come and go, and I've been taking notes. I've learned to grow more spring flowering bulbs. I'm planting a lot of daffodils and pansies in the fall and in the spring because I know that those will come back, but I haven't really gotten my sea legs with tulips yet, although you'll see that I have tried in the back in a future video. I added a stand of iris that quickly filled in a large space and a clematis to grow up my mailbox, as well as Shasta daisy to fill in the hell strip and bloom. They will take up the mantle throughout spring and die back just in time for the zinnias to emerge in summer. Surprisingly, I've also been able to grow calla lily in the hell strip. Calla lily is a surprisingly tough plant. Not to toot my own horn or, well, maybe just a little. I am so impressed with how this garden is transitioning from season to season, especially from spring to summer. There are yarrow growing, and they are beautiful with their varying colors at different stages of bloom. And then in the spaces in between the yarrow, the lily have really shined. They're so beautiful and so tall that I can even enjoy them from over the banister on the front patio. I've tried a container combination to take me from spring to summer that really was successful this year. And the local wildlife, well, they seem to approve. By late summer, it was time to fill in the gaps in the garden with heat-tolerant perennials like impatiens and sedum. I've learned that this stand of iris is very prone to leaf spot. I've enjoyed their flowers, but this is the last year for this plant. It's only been 4 years, and the mixed hedge has grown so tall, it's already offering me privacy and blooms sporadically throughout the year. I also enjoy the bold leaves of this canna lily, but it's just a little overwhelming, so I'm making a mental note to move them elsewhere. And I love the way the garden forces you to take this walk around the bend to discover something new, like this red zinnia that's self-seeded here just below the red leaves of the copper top viburnum, a perfect pair. Now, if you're not familiar with my cultural heritage, you might be surprised to see the okra growing alongside the hydrangea in this border, but of course I have okra. And I'm so glad I do, because okra fresh off the plant is the sweetest, tastiest treat in summer. And as it turns out, dried okra pods make excellent additions to forever flower arrangements. At some point, I started throwing milkweed seeds into the beds and borders to support the local monarch butterfly population, and they're turning up everywhere. This garden is truly a combination of all of the plants that I've discovered throughout the years and a real collage or mishmash. And over the years, the stain on the front patio has faded and will need a touch-up. Now, I'm really going for that urban cottage look. So I'm adding perennials into the mixed hedge. And I'm starting off with these divisions of things like coneflower, black-eyed Susan, and dahlia. I'm not sure what will thrive here yet, but I think that I can play it safe with these to start. And I started a lot of these plants from seeds. So although I'll miss them if they don't make it, I haven't invested a lot into this project yet. Winter this year is tough. It's as if we went straight from summer into winter. The plants were in for a shock. And we had snow for the first time in a long time, which was beautiful. It's nature's Etch-a-Sketch. Winter is. It forces you to start over with a blank slate and to really reflect on the year past. But it also creates this little bit of suspense, because although you're pretty sure your plants will come back in the spring, you just can't be certain. Another spring, and I'm taking stock. This past winter has been notably difficult. Even seasoned gardeners had losses. There are some beauties to appreciate, including this purple columbine and this stand of daffodil. It's still quite early in spring, so it's hard to tell exactly what has made it, but at least I know this has. I'm lucky this year because most of the bushes in my mixed hedge have survived. But it's clear that the copper top viburnum has not. And this unfamiliar friend, I think some of us would call a weed, actually lifts my spirits because it's offering color that I didn't otherwise have. Star magnolia is blooming. And the bridal wreath spirea is really putting on a show for the first time since I've planted it. I love this plant. The foundation border is filling out. And there are even a few daffodils blooming. The Chinese snowball viburnum is offering big, beautiful, bouncy blooms to appreciate. I still got that iris, but not for long. Finally, the lilies show their little faces. And this bed is a little bit more restrained this year. That's because the loropetalum are really filling out. And so is this blue spirea. I've been putting a little bit of time and energy into this often looked over area on the side of my home that is part shady, part sunny, and seems to love to grow wild violets. And I've added this walkway up through my perennial border to my front door. The perennial border is filling out with a lot of the plants that we saw in the fall as such little tiny plants. And they're still pretty small, but they're definitely settling in. Now Shasta Daisy has to compete for space in between pansies. And the calla lily is still going strong. I love my tropical containers. One thing about my front patio is it is an incredibly hot space. My home is southwest facing, so the things that I grow there have to be able to tolerate the heat. Now in summer, the bridal wreath spirea isn't blooming, but it is still bright green and beautiful and offers a beautiful backdrop to the budding perennial border. I've replaced the dead copper top with privet, Japanese privet. And this year the dahlia is blooming way more profusely than it has in the past. It's a lovely view. And it just keeps developing and changing. I really appreciate how unpredictable the garden can be. Of course, there are things that we can predict, like the bulbs will come up in spring and the lavender will bloom at the beginning of summer. But every single day I come out here and there's a new sight that I wasn't expecting. Do you remember when I planted that little division of black-eyed Susan? Look how big it is now. No snow this time. It's actually a pretty mild winter, so I'm looking forward to seeing the spring show. I've planted tulips in addition to daffodils, so it's going to be something. And just have a look at these hellebores. It's spring, and spring of the 6th year does not let me down. 6 years of experience, 6 years of planting, and I've got bloom after bloom after bloom. The daffodils have begun to naturalize and spread. They are at home here. And so are these hellebores, which just goes to show you that you really do just have to try. I definitely did not think that I would have success with hellebore, and that's just because it was a new plant to me. But it is naturalizing, spreading, and blooming. Just look at those beautiful ruffled blooms. And I love them because I can see them from my bedroom window. I've also got so many low-growing blooms in spring, like this vinca, as well as this crocus. Did you know that the saffron spice actually comes from the center of a crocus flower? With so many spring flowering bulbs blooming, who needs the bright pink magenta flowers of star magnolia or the soft ruffly flowers of the Chinese snowball, or even the flowers of loropetalum, completely colored in pink flowers that shine like jewels in the spring sun? Well, I do that too. I mean, in the spring, my garden is just so colorful. And I'm so thankful because this has really been the result of experience and experimentation. And now I'm in this place where in the spring, I have so much color to enjoy. And I've been supported and encouraged and even helped by so many friends and family along this gardening journey. And I'm so thankful for them. And I'm thankful to you. Thank you for being here with me now. Thank you for taking this time to look back on this gardening journey with me. If you've made it this far and you like what you're seeing, then I hope that you'll subscribe. And if you have some ideas for other spring flowering plants, leave those in the comments. It is cold in spring. And the truth is that I'm appreciating the bulb show from indoors or from my front patio most of the time. And so I actually did something a little bit different this year. I started planting my spring flowering bulbs in containers, and that has been a very welcomed change. Surprisingly, spring flowering bulbs like tulips and daffodils do just fine in containers. Now, I won't know until next year if they'll come back, but at least in this last spring, I've been able to enjoy them, even cozied up on the front porch with a hot cup of coffee. I have been able to get up close and personal with some of the beautiful tulips and their jewel tones. even more than that, I've extended this spring show through the front garden, through the patio, and then into my home. And this spring, I started work on the walkway to the secret garden, but I'm taking it a little bit at a time. In fact, I do most of my gardening work this way, a little bit at a time until it's done. The perennial border is finally filled to bursting this summer. And the word of the day is cohesion. I'm learning to build beautiful, cohesive borders, and it's the lavender that ties this border together. I finally achieved the urban cottage aesthetic that I've been going for. And if you're wondering what I mean when I say urban cottage, my home is in a big city. And the cottage garden is a garden that is filled with perennials and annuals, all different types, commingling and growing together. And then my patio is a tropical garden, an oasis. Kind of like you'd imagine a balcony on an island somewhere. Somehow the two aesthetics marry well together. As we near the end, I can't tell you how glad I am that I took these videos and photos and that I saved them. I mean, I began recording video and photos not to post onto YouTube, but in order to have this record, this gardening diary. When I started, I was such a novice. I didn't really know what to record. I didn't know what to take note of in like a garden journal or diary. So I just kept taking pictures, and in the beginning I was taking pictures of the things that looked beautiful to me. But now I realize I need to just do better about taking pictures and photos of everything to really give myself the full picture. Because as a reflective, it's really a good idea for me to be able to reflect on both the successes and the failures of the gardening year. But even as I say that, I want to remind you that there are no failures in the garden. Of course, things die, things get stunted, they get disease, pests attack. It's not a failure, it's a lesson. Everything in the garden is a lesson. So if you're new on the gardening journey, if you have stumbled upon this side of YouTube by mistake, then I hope that I've inspired you to start gardening or to carry on. You know, as humans, our connection to gardening is so deep. It's not only how we fed ourselves, it's how we nourished our bodies, it's how we healed our bodies. Flowers and foliage, they're how we celebrate, they're how we make a space our own. Herbs and flowers have spiritual energies. We even use flowers to mark transitions in our lives, weddings and funerals, because herbs and flowers are symbolic. And at the end of the day, you feel better in a garden because you are connected to the garden. And we've made it to the end of 6 years in my garden, and now I'm gonna take you all the way back.